And just like that, an hour passed. The class went smoothly thanks to Haruka's diligent attitude. Haruka is glad to see that Shinichiro's teaching skills are amazing and wonders if he had some teaching experience, which he confirms. He recalls his first year in his old company, when his superiors told him to ask if something was unclear about his responsibilities. However, reality was different. Nobody wanted to solve his questions, and if he made a mistake, they would yell at him because he never asked. It got to a point where he stopped asking and naturally developed 3 principles when he had to train others, which are the same he is applying with Haruka. First, he would show the student the completed task and what everything means. Second, show the process to reach a completed task, making sure that each step is being followed by the student. And finally, praise the student to raise confidence and make it easier to ask remaining questions, which is exactly where Shinichiro is at with Haruka, praising her for solving the problem. Haruka can't stop smiling and admiring Shinichiro's teaching skills. After a while, they decide to take a short break, and Haruka asks him if he has decided what he wants to do after school, which Shinichiro replies quickly, saying that he wants to go to college in order to find a good company. Haruka mentions that her father is already preparing a position for her in his company after she graduates college, but she considers that cheating, surprising Shinichiro with her honesty. She nervously adds that she's still unsure but has already checked job descriptions about workplaces that are like home or that welcome all applicants, sparking Shinichiro's old memories. Haruka continues, saying that those descriptions sound nice and thinks that doing her best will be more than enough in those places. Upon finishing, Shinichiro yells with all his might, telling her to stop. He warns Haruka that she can't get fooled by that kind of description since those are tickets to hell, which Haruka doesn't understand. Shinichiro's experiences were made for this moment. He explains that companies that welcome any applicant have terrible job conditions. The companies that claim to be like family are actually controlled by the family of the CEO. And finally, the companies where hard work is rewarded are just another way to say that they have insane quotas. He advises Haruka to avoid those in order to never encounter a shady company. Shinichiro was about to expose himself, but says that his cousin used to work almost all day, and his extra hours were simply erased so he could never get compensation, which really scares Haruka. She asks him how he knows so many details about that company, and Shinichiro reminds her that his cousin told him everything about the horrible place where he worked until he was 30. Shinichiro gets serious, mentioning the verbal abuse his cousin suffered, all the work he had to do, and constantly receiving blame from the bosses, but no credit for a good job. Haruka listens attentively, not believing that workers could collapse from exhaustion and be completely ignored by those in charge. She asks him if he is not mixing up wartime torture stories, but Shinichiro says that is the reality of current Japan. He finishes by saying that's why he's doing his best in his studies to find a good job, which also ends up motivating Haruka. He is aware that the stories from his old life scared Haruka, but they should be more than enough to take her away from her path of self-destruction. Haruka commends Shinichiro for changing so dramatically just by hearing those stories, but he mentions that he's nothing special after all. He got a second chance after learning those lessons the hard way. In his first life, he didn't care that much about his future, thinking that everything would work out somehow, and he had to pay 12 years in a horrible company. He even had hopes that fate would make him and Haruka end up together, but he never saw her again. He had to live through hell and die once in order to understand reality, so he has nothing special. But suddenly, Haruka breaks the flow of bad thoughts, saying that he's indeed great. She is aware that everyone knows they should work on becoming the best version of ourselves, but actually doing it requires a lot of willpower. With a bright and honest smile, Haruka mentions that she respects Shinichiro for making the decision to act, something that she considers very attractive. Shinichiro can't help but blush, trying to hold his feelings from bursting out. One day, during a break in their study sessions, Shinichiro couldn't help but notice how excited Haruka was about the upcoming school festival. She explained that she couldn't experience them when she was a child, and so every time the school is in a festival mood, she feels overjoyed. Haruka considers that students gathering together to make the event enjoyable is too wonderful, but despite her emotions shining, Shinichiro always thought the festivals were a bother he had to endure. Enjoying those events is something he couldn't do in his previous life, so this time he decides to play along with Haruka, though she's still unsure of what event her class is going to produce. The next day, the ideas for the school festival are displayed on the board, though it seems nobody is able to reach an agreement about what to choose. Mitsuki is leading the meeting, but even she is getting annoyed seeing people fight over their ideas. Shinichiro is tired of it. They've been there for over an hour and nothing has been settled yet. Upon gazing at the meeting, he realized it was all noise. On one side, there are people that only argue but don't propose anything, and on the other, some that only want to take the easiest option. Mitsuki is in the middle, but she's too obsessed with cooperation to the point of never making a decision. It all resembles his meetings in his previous life, people wanting to make their ideas heard but without the will to have a discussion. He knows that under this situation, the other students prefer to stay silent, waiting for the arbitrator to solve the problem. But Mitsuki seems to lack that ability. This happened exactly the same in his previous life, the class argued, until time ran out and ended up making an exhibition no one cared about. Suddenly, Shinichiro looked at Haruka. She appeared nervous and sad. All her happiness and excitement for the festival she showed before was vanishing. He knows that if this continues, the end result will be the opposite of what Haruka wanted. He knows there's a way to make something meaningful, but it would require a lot of preparation and execution. He has already seen a bad festival, so it wouldn't be wrong to make something nice for once, especially because Shinichiro doesn't want to see Haruka sad at the end of the festival. Back at his house, Kanako is watching in hunger as her older brother cooks some takoyaki, and she asks why he's making that, to which Shinichiro explains that he's doing it in order to keep Haruka from being sad, which Kanako doesn't fully understand. She asks him if Haruka has an obsession with baking powder or something, but Shinichiro replies that it has nothing to do with that. Kanako keeps yelling at him for not explaining properly until Shinichiro receives a call. In an instant, he becomes a professional businessman, negotiating with the person on the other end of the call while Kanako looks at him dumbfounded, not knowing if she's truly seeing her brother. Upon hanging up, Kanako can't hold her curiosity and asks him how he managed to transform into a professional negotiator. Shinichiro notices his businessman side slipped again, but he pretends, saying that he just copied the style that the manufacturers use. Kanako decides to ignore it since her brother's oddities are becoming part of his usual self. She decides to ask again about his plans to make Haruka happy, but Shinichiro is taking this issue seriously, and Kanako notices, affirming that she's become a huge fan of the new side of her older brother. Shinichiro explains his plan, but Kanako can't hide her laughter, despite her brother reminding her that he's serious about it. Kanako apologizes, adding that it is very special that someone made him change this much since the old version of her brother never would have thought about this kind of plan. She encourages him, asking him to give it his best since he might never find someone else that impacts him that much. Shinichiro accepts her words. He thinks that meeting Haruka is nothing less than a miracle, something that makes fate deserving of an honest thanks. However, he always considered Haruka as an inspiration, as an idol. But for some reason, those words are starting to feel off. Kanako notices her brother spacing out and asks if everything is all right. He confirms and finishes the takoyaki before it burns. With that, he's sure that he'll put his plan in motion the next day. The next day arrives and the scene repeats itself. Nothing but arguments fill the mood of the classroom. Shinichiro doesn't understand how the people fighting don't realize that they are just wasting time and killing the will of the others to participate. He decides that he's seen enough and now it's the perfect moment to step in, but for some reason his legs feel heavy. His body starts shaking. Even coming back from death didn't get rid of that sensation. The feeling of not wanting to leave his seat, his safe place, where he didn't need to give his opinion or take action. But this time, he won't let that feeling take control of his life. He's been a coward for far too long already. He stands up, surprising Mitsuki and the rest of his classmates. From all the people, nobody was expecting him to intervene. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.